there's a strong emotional component to sound. When I hear somebody else play the cello or hear a great pianist play or a singer sing, whether or not I'm moved by that sound, it's something that's so intuitive, it's so difficult to analyze. But I know when I'm not moved by it. And I know when I'm generating my own sound, if it's not the real McCoy, if it's not the thing that I'm wanting, I know that I have to sit there and keep grinding it out until it comes. So it has a very strong emotional component, and it's a physical component because it's crafted, right? And then the instrument is itself its own resonating being that you have to kind of work with. And there are days, where it's not going to ring as easily, and there are days when I'm not going to be as deft at, pulling the sound from it. So there's that kind of partnership and understanding involved in sound. I find it, very physical, very emotional, very intuitive, very primal.
Welcome back to Vivace and to our interpretation and the art of the bow. We're, as usual, glad and honored to have Astrid Schween here with us, and she will explore the wonderfully colorful art of bowing. So, the bow is central to the artist's ability to convey sound or speech, render a variety of colors, characters, gestures, and intensities. Island rhythm, phrasing, style, and meter, we will delve into the standard French bow strokes in the context of musical examples from the cello and chamber music repertoire. Our goal here is to integrate the technical components of bowing into the interpretive decision making process.
It's our great pleasure to have Astrid Schween join us at Vivace for the last several days, teaching master classes and now this course, as well as participating in other courses that take place during the week. She's appeared around the world in major concert halls, major music centers as a member of the Juilliard String Quartet, as well as other very formidable and prominent organizations and groups. She's on the faculty at the Juilliard School, the Perlman Music Program, and Vivace Virtual Cello Festival. Welcome, Astrid.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you, Ludo. Thank you very much for having me. This is so exciting. I love talking about the bow, and I love being in a community of cellists where we can sort of geek out on the topic. It's a little weird because I can't see all of you right now, but I hope you'll participate with some questions and comments as we go along. As I got ready for this evening's talk, I tried my very best to boil down the combined wisdom of my various wonderful teachers over the years, and to kind of render the essence for our discussion this evening. Like Paul Katz, who spoke to us a few days ago, I had a number of teachers, and all of them were brimming with inspiration and ideas about how best to play the cello and how to use the bow most effectively. I grew up basically at Juilliard, and so a lot of these teachers were there. There's Leonard Rose and his various assistants and peers, people like Channing Robbins and Ardith Alton, Scott Ballantyne and Eugene Moy. These were at the time, these were graduate students and young professionals who also worked with me, and they had studied with Mr. Rose. Several of my years at Juilliard were spent with the great Harvey Shapiro, beautiful cellist, a really challenging teacher. And those of you who knew Harvey are probably giggling right now. And then after Juilliard and in the summers and in between things, I worked with Bernard Greenhouse. I had summer lessons with Philippe Muller and Jacqueline Dupre. I worked with her for a number of years in London. And I would just want to add a couple more people because there are so many cellists in this sort of pot of mine who all contributed to the way I think about sound. As a youngster, my very first teacher was Yo-Yo's father, Dr. H.T. Ma. He was a wonderful teacher for children. And then way after Juilliard, I found the need to just sort of consult with some people about additional thoughts on an artistic level. And I played for Jeffrey Solo. I had lessons in Russian tone production with Josef Feigelson. and I studied with William Pleath, as we talked about yesterday. So this is a really nice body of information to sort through over the years. And at some point, I realized as a young player that I needed to synthesize all of this and create my own sort of philosophy about bowing and how I was going to express myself. Before we get into the thick of things here, I just want to say that every cellist has, and every teacher has their special philosophy and tradition about bowing. And so what we're going to do tonight is look at mine. I can share that with you, and I'm happy to do that. But I think it's so important to remain open and to try things that everyone is sharing with you, especially at Vivace. It's just this amazing collection of cellists who can share their wisdom. My approach is what I've used to play as a soloist in recitals, to play concertos with orchestra, to play in my life when I was in my life in a piano trio, and now my life in the Juilliard Quartet. These are all techniques that I draw on daily. And I think maybe the best way to jump in is just to go straight to the French bow strokes. So I've prepared some little definitions here of the French bow strokes. And Ludo, if you could pull those up for us, please. This might be a good time to just share those with everybody. And like everything we're going to discuss tonight, this is subject to interpretation, everyone. So, but these are kind of my definitions mixed with really what I think Galamian put forth in his wonderful book, The Principles of Violin Playing and Teaching. So I thought we could start with martelet. This is perhaps the most basic and essential bow stroke. I think it is. It's like a pizzicato with the bow. And, you know, simple martelet, you know, everybody kind of knows how to do that. You may not have a label for it. I certainly didn't. Growing up, we didn't name everything in that way. But I think it's such an important bow stroke because it just initiates the resonance of the cello. So where does this show up in the repertoire? Well, a famous one. Everybody knows what that is, right? First note of the Sanson in the Lolo. A whole series of martelets. It's a very assertive stroke. It can also be used to practice more delicate strokes. I wouldn't think of practicing my Bach without a little extra martelet practice. Just to sort of feel the string and that engagement. And, you know, as we go on through tonight, I've got to talk a little faster because I'm already falling behind schedule. But I'm going to talk about the compression of the stick toward the hair as a way of articulating. And it's not to be confused with pressing, it's compression. And I try to use gravity, weight, and leverage to make that happen. Okay, moving along to détaché. We all know détaché, thanks Ludo, a smooth sounding set of separately bowed strokes. And this can be done in all different regions of the bow, although the middle is the most common. Forgive all my capitals there, but I tend to capitalize the regions of the bow like they're real geographical locations. So, that passage from the Prokofiev. Let's see, what else? It's another good one for us. Yeah, and the Haydn C major. All these kinds of, I think 16ths that you want on the string, for example, that's a perfect stroke to use for that. Okay, and then let's just hop back for a moment to our list. This next bow stroke, collé, is something that a lot of people I find have not heard of. But I have to say it is a very big part of my particular bow technique. You see, it's the third thing listed. And I wrote articulated and unarticulated, meaning it can be kind of used in different ways. And a great way to experience it is to kind of play just in the air with a pencil, something lightweight, where you can experiment with the flexibility of the fingers, both in extension and sort of in a sideways motion. Now, too much of this, like anything, can be a terrible thing. So I'm going to show you some ways in which I use the collé to kind of combine it with other bow strokes. That's usually what I find it's most useful for. So I'll use it in a legato as I change bow. Here's, let's see. You can see I've got a little bit of a squid action going there at the frog to conceal my bow changes. I might also use it in the rococo. I should have used it here. And then placing. So it's a really great way to remove the bow from the string or place it on the string. It's also something I use if I'm playing a sautillé stroke, something that's coming up in our list. But it's a great addition to a series of other strokes, and it can really help add, help you mix the different grays of the black and white strokes. How about we put it like that? Okay, we're going to come back to martelet, détaché, and collé very soon because I'm going to show you some exercises that I love to use. But let's go on for now. So legato, I just demonstrated that wonderful melody, the second theme of the slow movement of the Dvorak concerto, where you just really try to sing. Other great singing passages. Again, trying to conceal the bow change as much as possible. And yes, I meant just looking at my definition here. I want to say something about this, the way in which I'm using the bow mostly this evening. Really comes from the Leonard Rose / Galamian tradition. Rose was a teacher at Meadowmount for many years, and that was Galamian's boot camp, as we know, for string playing in the summertime. It still is. And there are many great artists who came through that process of Galamian's techniques, and maybe this is a good time to show you guys the book. This is a really old copy, but it has Mr. Galamian's signature on the cover. And if you don't own it, I think it's a great thing to look out for. Principles of Violin Playing and Teaching. And he goes through the left hand, the right hand, the bow strokes, and teaching as well. It's just really a nice way of looking at things. It's kind of not unlike the Pleath book that we discussed last night. Let's see. Moving through this, I just want to say that with Leonard Rose, for our work in legatos, he was very clear with me. I remember him talking about creating a bit of a square area here. So from the frog to the middle was kind of, if you imagine me like this, it's a little bit of a rectangle. And then from the middle of the bow to the tip, you can see, if you lop off my head, you get a little bit of a, what you might call a triangle. The fingerboard, the bow, and my arm. So that upper half becomes something that's detachable, right? There's that détaché. And the lower half of the bow is more of a pendulum swing from the shoulder and back. So in doing a legato, again, it's a little bit of a composite of things. Halfway through this bow stroke, I'm making my rectangle, and there's my triangle. And so it's kind of a little bit of the geometry at work in these strokes. I just want to sort of say that because we might be referring to that later. Okay, some more bow strokes. Let's go on, Ludo. Thank you. We have the l'oreille or portado, and this is kind of this is now getting very artistic and very fancy, right? This is A lot of you might know of the word portato as a dirty word when it shows up in your playing. Let me see if I can do a bad portato. When it has like a kind of aggressive rhythmic after kick. But portato can be something that we desire and something that we really feel affection for. There's a very big moment in the Debussy sonata here. And it's a thing to practice that it doesn't, Debussy does not make that simple for us. But that's a very overt demonstration of the doré or the portato. A close relative of this term would be back on our French bow strokes, and this is the parlando. I'm calling this one an articulated bow stroke because it, I mean, again, there might be people who are like, I don't know, that's stretching it a little. But I think it is because it indicates emphasis. And parlando literally means to speak something. I think Fritz Kreisler's violin playing is that sort of old-fashioned, spoken, wonderful kind of attention to detail. I don't know if this is really a true parlando, but the way I bow the opening of the Brahms E minor sonata, I'm kind of relying on a little bit of it. There it is. And I'm going to use it here too. Maybe a little. So it just gives a tiny little bit of artistic attitude to those small, detailed notes. Ricochet. Okay, this is fun. The last movement of the Britten Sonata. Right? Harnessing that thing when you're exhausted at the end of the sonata is a pain, but it's fun. It's a great challenge. And that movement, it has ricochet all over the place. It's a stroke that doesn't come up all the time for cellists. I think it's probably more common for fiddle players. But I think, is it in terms of chamber music, the Weber Clarinet Quintet has a whole stretch where people are kind of galloping a little bit. It's a great stroke. Okay, so I showed you a little bit of the sautiller before. So that's really using collé. I find that for me to do my sautiller, which is a stroke that's articulated, obviously, right? You hear the little percussive sound, but it's not jumping. If it were jumping, I'd have to slow it down. I'd have to slow it down to what I call a spiccato. So the bow strokes have speed limits, and the sautiller is probably the fastest off the stroke-ish stroke that we have. And I believe what I'm doing is kind of getting the string, the hair of the bow to be kind of sticky against the string, and I'm having the stick here dance a bit on top, so it's agitated, and I'm agitating it by using my collé to create a rocking motion, and this sets up, a little bit of a tam-tam, I guess. Right, and that's something that you can sustain with maybe a little bit of a detachment at the elbow. Yeah. Okay. So spiccato. The other day when Paul Katz was talking about his first recording with the Cleveland Quartet, he mentioned the Brahms, and we got to hear some of that, the C minor quartet. And that's what I would call a spiccato. What is the theme? So underneath that, the cello and viola. I'm skipping a little bit. But yeah, that's a prodigious spiccato passage. And it's something that, you know, I found when I joined the string quartet, when I first joined the Lark Quartet many years ago. It was very humbling because I realized that I did not have a repertoire of spiccatos. I had one, and it was, if it didn't fit the tempo or the style that we were playing, I was really sunk. So I had to spend a lot of time refining these strokes. These are just sort of loose guidelines toward the different strokes. And like everything we do in the world of art, we modify and we adjust and we create hybrid versions. What else do I have? Oh yes, staccato. So staccato is a funny thing, right? You could have something like that, a sticky short note. And in the case of a single solitary staccato, one short note, I probably would go for something like a scoop like that. I was working with, I guess it was Manuel a few days ago on the Gigue from the C major suite, and we realized that we needed that to get things going. Up bow, down bow, that sticky adhesion to the string. So there are more of these. I really encourage you to look at Mr. Galamian's book, and online there are all kinds of resources for learning more about the French bow strokes. The reason I want to talk about them tonight is because I think they're a great thing to have ready to go in your toolbox, in our toolboxes. So if you're playing Dvorak, you know, I'm using these strokes, using sort of a legato slur. There's my scoop. Twice, and here comes a martelé with a little bit of a détaché action. So there are many other ways to do that, but I find it just helps me so much to be able to click into a stroke or to help a student in this way. And I know that if people practice just a little bit of bow stroke work every day, it just can make your life much easier. Also refines your resonance so that you're more likely when you move the bow across the string to take the string with you, right? That's that definition of the martelé, that as you pull, the string comes with you. As you push, it goes with you. And so you're constantly able to keep the cello in a state of resonance. And I think that's the name of the game. Okay, so I promised to show you some exercises that I think will be helpful. Ludo, can we please go to the self-check exercise that I popped in there? There we go, with my beautiful handwriting. So a couple days ago, Yi-Sun Kim treated us to a beautiful demonstration of preparation for etude work, and she included some self-check. Now, Yi-Sun showed you guys this book. This is the Opus 3, 40 Variations. Thank you for the close-up. This is a great book, and I would say if you're going away for 2 weeks and you want to bring a book on bowing, take this one with you. It's fantastic. And it has the advantage that each of the variations is truly musical, and the bowing is worked into the musical content. I, however, have also found, and I bet Yi-Sun knows about these as well, there are 6 more books, all devoted to the bow, and these are Self-Check Opus 2, parts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And these are when you really want to dig more deeply into the various strokes and refine them further. They're fantastic. So if we go back to our little example there that Ludo has up, thanks. This is from Opus 2, part 6 is really what it's called. and I wrote the word progression, and there's a little arrow that I cut off. But those top two lines are the chord progression on which all the exercises that follow in this Part 6 book are based. And they're like 800 and something. It's insane. It's like Sevcek just had no limit to his imagination for what the bow could do. And this is just one of 7 books on the bow. So I think it's worth taking some time to read through this slowly. Sevcek gives metronome markings for each exercise. He tells you where in the bow to perform them. He tells you in 3 languages. It's been translated. So the letter G is for ganzem Bogen, which is full whole bow in German. There are some, if we scroll down just a little, Ludo, thank you. You'll see that that whole first set in the moderato are all full bow stroke exercises. And they are fantastic. And just doing a couple of these in a day will just make you a better cellist. I find that anyway. I have to say that I find Mr. Sevcek's metronome markings too fast for me to think. And so sometimes I'll just slow them way down, or I'll insert rests in between things, especially if they're articulated strokes. So if we keep scrolling down, Ludo, to the next page, I thought that a little further, in the middle of the page. Thank you. Perfect. There's that arrow, and exercise number 83. Isn't that amazing? We're just on the second page and we're already at exercise 83. So here he says 1/3 of the bow. He also has the letter M, which in his lingo, he has a little legend that describes these things. The letter M refers to any half of the bow. And what's cute about that is, yes, thank you. That's great. I'm taking Ludo with me, John. You can do this in the lower half, in the upper half, or in the middle half, which I love. And I thought this would be a great exercise to just sort of dwell on for a second, because you can apply several strokes. So just looking at it right away, I see détaché and martelé. So why don't we try it that way? So here, I'll demonstrate this. Let's see. Right. And so, Ludo, if you can switch to me for a sec, I'm going to, thank you, show you guys what I'm doing as far as geometry. Right, I'm trying to be very legato sounding on my détaché. And now I'm going to be a little brutal. And I can tell you now I'm a lot slower than Sevcek's tempo, but I'm happy because I can actually control and hear and think and respond and assess what's going on. Another way I might practice this is I might practice collé. And so I'll do collé on the string and collé off the string. And that would look like this. Probably at the frog. This is taking my concentration. Again, with each one of these bow strokes that release quickly, I'm first compressing the stick toward the hair, right? So these guys, these smooth-sounding A's, don't take a lot of effort, but I do have to be on the right level so that I can do both. And then these are compress, release. Yeah, and it's very important that you be at the right level so that it feels like it's not a strain. Anyway, so you could also decide, well, I don't have a problem with that. I want to work on my détaché and martelé at the tip. So you could practice. You can hear my losing purchase. And that's all part of the practice, is to make that really clean and control the string. There is a component of bowing which is controlling the string. So Okay, I just wanted to introduce you to that and to encourage you to get the Sevchek books and explore. And, you can, I think the best way I've found to use them is to get a mirror, get my metronome handy, and to set some parameters to decide what strokes I'm going to practice, where in the bow I'm going to practice them, and Sevchek will help with that. And I will also select sound points. And with just those little parameters set, I get to practice the accuracy and precision of my bowing. And that's not something that we all think about, I think, often enough. So, yeah, good. Well, let's move on. There's a whole sort of second segment that I'd like to cover with everybody. Now that we've talked largely about, articulated strokes, I'd love to talk now about playing in such a way that the bow doesn't really get noticed so much, embedding the bow into the phrase, so that we get something that's more vocal. And I think in his very beautiful presentation last night, Michael Cannon talked about my hero, Cecilia Bartoli, and I just had to show you all how serious I am about this. This CD and I go everywhere together. Either she's in the car with me, or she's on my iPhone or my iPod or whatever. She's everywhere. I just believe so much in this woman's artistry, and I think for anybody who's working on, early classical sonatas, you know how those are often requirements on auditions. Not to mention they're beautiful and they all feature arias. I mean, you just need to listen to this particular recording. It's called If You Love Me, and it's all 18th century songs, and it's just exquisite. You'll know immediately what to do if you listen to this. So I just had to give a shout out to Cecilia. So, but I think, she's not the only singer who influenced me, and I started to really think about what is it about playing the cello and making a songful sound, a human sound, something that doesn't necessarily have to sound like there's a mechanical component. So that really has been a very big focus of mine. And I think maybe what I'll do now is go through some ways of practicing little strategies for a songful sound, and then I'll play some excerpts from the repertoire, and then we can talk about it after that. So, Ludo, I think there's a page there that says Galamian sans filet on it. That was part of that previous file, so it's right after the second. Yeah, you found it. Thank you. So this is in Mr. Galamian's book, and I think violinists will have probably the final say on exactly what sans filet is, but one of the purposes of practicing sans filet is to sort of maximize one's staying power in the string and developing greater bow control. I have found it useful as a kind of artistic tool towards singing, and you'll see those very simple hairpins there in example 93, where we have the hairpin to the up bow, and we have, then the next example is the hairpin to the down bow, and then descending gestures both on a down and an up, and then you get to practice them back to back. And then there are those on the bottom line there of those example 93, you'll see he sort of made a composite of things. So I call those 6 exercises, and I practice them, and I have my students practice them too. We select a sound point, and maybe this is a good time to talk about tracks. Dividing the string into imaginary lanes or tracks can be very useful. Again, I didn't grow up with this, but when I became the teacher of other people, I found I needed to find a responsible way to talk about this and quantify it. And so basically at the bottom of the fingerboard, not on the fingerboard. I'm very much like Julia Lichten. I saw your wonderful lesson the other day, Julia, and you were like, get away from the fingerboard. And I agreed. I don't ever bow over the fingerboard. But right at the bottom, I would call it track 1, and then the equator of the string, right in the middle, I'd call that track 3, and then the bridge, I'd call track 5. And in between we have tracks 2 and 4, which I have to confess, I hang out there a lot. So for the sans filet exercises, I would pick, let's say I pick track 2. And if Ludo, if you could flash that back on the screen for us one more time, please. Thank you. That first exercise, down to up bow, I'm going to practice that in track 2, and I'm going to give myself 2 beats to make a fantastic, hopefully, crescendo to the up bow and a quick dim down. Let me see if I can accomplish that, and I'll tell you what I'm doing. So, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. I think being super exaggerated in this case is really important. I'm trying to make a gush, and I'm trying to do it in a time frame. So I would use a real metronome, something that's not sympathetic to my discomfort. Now, in order to do this, so here maybe we can zoom in on me again for a second. I'm going to take the middle of the bow, and instead of keeping it at the middle, I'm going to move it to around the balance point. And that's where my second beat will start. So it'll be frog to new middle, and then a big sweep out and a huge sweep back to that middle, and then relaxing back to the frog. So we have something like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So, and as every cellist knows, just moving the bow faster doesn't make things louder, right? So I'm adding weight and speed to that sound point. And I'm trying to be really good about not going to the bridge because I want to practice my bow speeds so that I have ways of connecting a legato very effectively and also playing with color later. I can do that same exercise in track 4. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4. And here, there's more resistance down here. So I'm going to give myself 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? That one's like a lot more obnoxious. It probably made all the digital stuff flash red a little bit. But that's a great kind of, I think, tool to have for maintaining that sostenuto at the tip. So here, on that D, I'm definitely pulling through with my sans filet to get that to keep singing into the up bow. Now, one of the things I just mentioned is that there's more resistance as you go toward the bridge, right? We know that. I think it's important that probably at this level, you know, where you're starting to talk about color and resistance, that you consider redefining old truths, or maybe adding an additional truth, that the fingerboard is not just a place to play softly, but it's a place that allows greater motion. It has less resistance, and the bridge is a place where you can pick up more resistance. So when I want to play something that really has to last a long time, when I need a slow bow, I seek greater resistance first, and then I deal with, do I have enough to keep my bow moving slowly? How do I know whether to use the bridge or my own weight? Because those are the two ways to play with resistance. It depends on the color. So let's see if I haven't tried this yet, so this might not be a great example, but let's see. Let's say I want to hold that first D natural in that melody super long, and I say, okay, I'm going to go to the bridge. So, well, I've got the resistance, and I feel like I could stay there till Tuesday, but I don't have a favorable sound. I don't have quite enough humanity and songfulness in that sound. So I may make a compromise and say, well, that's too rigid. The string is too tight there. I'm going to back off a little and add some more of my own body mass to that. little bit more in terms of options. I had more flexibility. Now, Hannah Roberts was teaching the other day, and she said those magic words. She said, play with the elasticity of the string. And I believe in that so much. That's what I was just doing. I was using the sponginess of the strings to receive my weight and to create more resistance so that I could get that slightly more songful quality in the resistance. Another thing you can practice to increase your color palette is what I call track wandering. And this is fun. So let's see, I'll start again in track 1, which is at the bottom of the fingerboard. And my goal here on the down bow is to travel, and then I'm going to do something that looks just horrible. It's exaggerated. I'm going to drop the tip of the bow so that I make a massive lane change. It's like I'm in the left lane of the highway, and I realize my exit's coming, and I'm going to be one of those drivers who cuts across. So here's what it looks like. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there's the bridge. 2, 3, 4. And I came back. Isn't that crazy? Let me see. 1, 2, drop. And now. So I find that a really useful skill. When I go from a position here to a position here, I need to accommodate for this. What is this? This is like 14, 15 inches. It's big. I need to get a slightly lower sound point, right? And there I am. Most of the time when players do stuff like this, it's not quite so noticeable. I'm exaggerating a little so everybody can see it. Let's do that same lane changing exercise on an up bow. And this is where things get a little tricky, because in order to do it on a down bow, I drop the tip. To do it on an up bow, 1, 2, I'm going to drop the frog. You hear the resistance? Oh, a lot of resistance. 0 resistance. It's very cool. It's like playing with the atmospheres of the cello. And again, I will use that hopefully to good effect in music that I'm playing, where I want to make these color changes, or where I need to be able to use a full bow to retake to the frog, and I don't want to be stuck at the bridge. So I brought a bunch of repertoire to demonstrate, all this stuff. Let me see, is there anything else here? I wonder, maybe I'll do some examples, and then I'll check and see what kind of questions are coming up. So I thought the beginning of Lala would be a perfect place, because it mostly deals with low strings in higher positions. And I feel like I'm a graduate of the tight thumb school when I was a kid and I had to play this piece. My thumb felt like it was just going to, leave my hand. It would get so rigid. And it wasn't till later that I realized I wasn't using sound points effectively. So here we go. Here are martelets. And now, here I'm going to make a choice. I want the nasty resonance of the bridge until there's a resolution in the orchestra. So I got through all of that without a damaged thumb, first of all, and with a fair amount of color and variety. And I think it's just so nice to know about these lanes because they just give the player more maneuverability. I already played the Brahms for you, but let's take a look at that. Ludo, do you have that in the repertoire file? We can have a look and see. Okay, there's my address. You guys can all come and visit. Now this is going to be perhaps a little controversial because this is an old Henley part, and you can see that Brahms wrote separate bows and separate, and a lot of people do this to great effect. I find that the change of bow kind of how can I put it? I find it too challenging for my vocal concept. And I feel that Brahms and I have an understanding. He might appreciate my approach, which includes a little bit more connection. So, little parlando. Going on, there are a lot more controversial things I did with the bowing here, but you know, for example, there's something of the dolce that I feel I can impart with the one direction that I can't do with changing bow. I just want to say it's not a straight slur. It's not that. I am giving it a little inflection, so I feel like I'm trying to pay tribute to what he had in mind. But that's a fun argument to have with friends. Let's look at the next one, Ludo. Do I have Debussy next? Yeah, okay. I also have some Prokofiev that I might show you guys, but let's do Debussy first. So here you see these big slurs, which can certainly be done, and I've heard people do them. I feel like with this particular music and this style, I want to get even more color and variety. I want the notes to have multiple shades in some cases, and I want to be able to move the speed of the sound. So I have kind of a lot of things on my agenda, and so sticking with the printed slurs doesn't always allow me that kind of color option. Again, I'm going to try to play it so that it doesn't sound like I've made up a new piece. So here's how this would go. So, thinking of his slurs, trying to exist within his slurs. So Ludo, if you can focus on me for a sec for this next part, I'm going to use a little sans filet, the kind that I haven't practiced, which is the hairpin in the middle. I want to give that F a little special content. And here he says molto dolce. So again, lots of sound points, lots of changes of bow speed. I think that's important for this music. And this is all before he goes through that. What else do we have? Schumann fantasy pieces. I saw a lesson on that the other day. So I think, do we have it in our collection, Ludo? I think we might. Thank you. Yeah, so here I gave you guys, this is the Henley part with somebody else's bowing. Sorry, I actually start on a down bow. But what's important is the length of the slurs and the fact that this was written for clarinet. And what do we do to make this breathe and connect on a cello? So I've come up with a little bit of a solution that involves a lot of sound points, a lot of bow speed changes, and a lot of bow changes. So here comes my version of this. Let's see, Ludo, if you want to focus on this. So I thank you. Okay. Now here he has one bow. I want to have an easy sound. I want to complain a little bit in these repetitions. So here's a complaint and another. And again. Suspensions. And there's this constant dialogue in this piece. Ta-dum. Da-dee-da-da. And then the next one. So you notice I have a lot of separate bows at the end. That would drive a lot of people crazy. I know that there are a lot of people like, why are you changing on the last note? I find I need something that has a release that's just a little bit more like someone finishing a statement, as opposed to, I worry if I didn't do that. Let's see. I'm just not behaving in a way that feels conducive to breathing. I'm trying to breathe through the bow. So that's making an interpretive choice for me. I did mention that I was going to play some of the Prokofiev, and I think that's another C string thing where a lot of people get stuck, right? C string feels like it needs to be muscled, but it doesn't. It needs to be finessed, I think. So high sound point. So there was that. I went this way. And now I'm in conversation with the piano, saving near the bridge. Dissonance. And you hear I've chosen to be a little severe. And now the opposite, a little breezy. So again, kind of painting with the color of the sound in ways that I think would appeal to Prokofiev's sense of fantasy and color. Yeah, so maybe one more, the Beethoven A major. We have Beethoven in Franck. Okay, so Ludo, you got some Beethoven for us to look at? I think there's one more. There we go. Okay, so again, another Henley edition. I know there's a Barenreiter version, and there are some differences. We were talking about Mr. Pleath last night, and the first time I played this for him, I did this bowing. I did all up. Oops, I think I did better than that. Something like that. It was crazy. And he looked at me and he said, I've never seen anyone do that. And then he let me do it, and we worked on how to do it well, which I thought was just awesome. What I do now is what's printed there. So there's that sans filet to the tip, a little. And I know the feeling of getting stuck on the tail of this tune. Right. Can't move. So I'm going to use some finesse here. And then this very important bass note. Whoops. And then here comes something like a portato, parlando, I don't know, Lorraine. That insistence. But I'm playing with the elasticity of the string, so it's giving me some options. Last thing I want to show you guys before we chat is the Franck Sonata, the first movement. Ludo, if you could show us that, please, that'd be awesome. This is the beginning of the first movement, which is something that when I play the sonata, I have to practice this a lot because, I don't know, it's hard. So... one of the things I'm trying to demonstrate, it's a little tricky to jump in and out of these styles, but he says molto dolce. I'm trying not to let the bow run faster than my left hand can color the sound. So I often will hear this. Right, that's kind of what it looks like on the page. But I'm trying to fill each note with as much color as I can. Respond to the harmony. Respond to the rhythm. And then so there's still density. I'm playing softly, but I'm playing with a great deal of commitment in the string. And if I could play that for like another 20 minutes, it would start to sound like I wanted, but that's the idea. In the second movement, Natasha was working with a student the other day, and they actually got to the topic of portato. And so for the second movement... and a big discussion about vibrato, right? So it's quite a communication, a conversation between the hands to manage the sound, the articulation, the rhythmic zest of that movement. I think it really does call for a little bit more spoken quality in the bow. So those are some thoughts on singing and disguising the bow's action. It might look like I'm doing a lot to show you guys, but in general, a lot of what I just played is I guess, vocal and inconspicuous in terms of the changes of bow. And I'm very curious to see what kind of questions pop up. So let's see what we have. Ludo, are you able to help me field some of these?
Absolutely. So we have a question from Kate. So first of all, she says, thank you. It's a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. Could you share if there are other technique books that you'd like to use with your students?
Yes. Oh, wow. What great question. That's fantastic. Yes, there are. Let's see. Natasha mentioned the other day the wonderful book by Hans Jensen, Cello Mind. My students and I have been doing a deep dive into that book this summer. and during the year as well. Tanya Carey, the great Tanya Tech Carey, has a gorgeous set of books. Cello Playing is Easy, and she has fantastic shifting exercises and position exercises, and she's really broken down cello playing into wonderfully clear categories. And my longtime friend and cellist extraordinaire, Martha Gershevsky. If you don't know that name, you guys should look her up. She was a protege of Luigi Silva, and she has a whole library of workbooks that cover every element of cello playing. So there's a book on sixths and a book on octaves and a book on thirds, and she has a recent book on warm-ups, book two, which I have to confess that in between Vivace activities, I'm playing with her new book and checking it out. So these guys are amazing. You know, they're the Sevcheks and Galamians of today, all beautiful cellists and incredibly thoughtful teachers, and they're expanding so much our range of what's possible. So yeah, I think it's great to not only collect these books but jump in. Thank you for the question.
Okay, so I'll welcome every attendee that has any other question to chime in and raise your hand so that we can promote you and see your faces, and we love to to involve you in that way. So I love the jumping around in the in all the repertoire and see how the technique actually has to support what we're doing. In our so I was wondering, what's your routine when you study the bow? So do you maybe have a daily routine of exercises of everything that related to the bow, or do you maybe focus on something that is related to the repertoire you're studying in this
Yeah,
period? How
yeah.
is it?
It's a great question, Ludo. I have to confess that I try to do things a little differently every day, um, but I think when it comes to my technical warm up or my students' technical warm up, get pretty methodical and make sure that we cover the big categories, the departments of technique we call them. Um, so there, each student has his or her own technical needs, and we may somebody might need some deep work on détaché. Other people might need some more sort of parlando type things, or matching the vibrato with the bow. So we'll kind of I'll help select exercises based on that. For myself, it's all about getting the cello to respond and resonate easily. Those are usually my objectives, and for me to feel good doing it. I see some people
Perfect.
popping up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we have Francesca and Nicholas. So if you can just turn on your camera and microphone and just pop up.
Hey,
Here we go.
Francesca, how are you?
I'm good. Long time no see.
Yes, 3 or 4 days.
Yes. Well, I've just been re-exploring things, and I had a question because I'm trying to get trying to get more attention out of my thumb, because I always find that it's defaults there, and
Hmm.
you could speak to how you find, I guess, the right point of like physical balance, so that you're dealing more with natural bow weight before you're adding things on, as opposed to, because I think I feel like I'm always coming at things with like maybe more of my engagement as opposed to like natural engagement first. Do you know what I mean, with the bow weight?
Yes, yes, I do. Yeah, that's a great question, Francesca. I think I find that it's easy to overwork the hand.
Yeah.
And so my first order of business is how much can I get away with that doesn't cost me anything, right? I want free weight and I want free sound. And, there you go. That was easy, right? Now, the reason I was talking about all those different sound points was not just because it's colorful and fun, but it relieves the thumb of its inclination to squeeze when you're trying to do certain gestures and you're in quote unquote the wrong sound point. I found that that's how I got myself into quite a bit of trouble as a young player, and I see it in students all the time. So yeah, finding weight, leverage, gravity first, and then if those things don't meet the needs of your stylistic agenda, then look for different parts of the bow. What can you do to modify that? And then what demands do those choices place on things like your grip and your angle? I do use a lot of different bow grips. I don't just hold a bow one way. So, depending what I'm up to, I may balance with 1 and 4. I may have extra adhesion with 2 and 3 because those are the good tuggers. The first finger is a really great enunciator. Fourth finger can really help, especially with things like the teeter-totter needed for the sautier. So there's all sorts of stuff going on, and I think just practicing those strokes kind of makes you ready for whatever you need. Yeah, did that answer what you had in mind?
Like one more related thing, I guess when you're thinking about the whole arm mechanism, is there any sort of sensation you find, in terms of like, I guess even elbow height in the most basic sense? So maybe it's just even a détaché kind of stroke. I guess
Mm-hmm.
what I'm experimenting with is like realizing there's times when maybe my weight is coming this way more as opposed to above. Do you know what I mean? And I'm trying to kind of, I don't know, just trying to decide, I guess, what is most natural to like lift things up higher so that you get
I see.
flow down, or do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird.
Another big question, right? So,
Right.
I mean, I have very long arms, and so I really have to push my elbows out in order to not impede the flow of the bow. And I think, for things like string crossings, something like that, I want to be able to, levitate a little bit more on the upper string and drop down to the lower. So that's going to have an influence on my posture. I also think that this space is very valuable in terms of playing in a big way. And so I don't want to be caught like this when I'm needing to generate leverage over the string. But like everything, these things can be overdone, and so I consult the mirror, I consult myself, I use my ear, comparing the feel with the sound, and then checking it out to see if I'm doing something completely wacky, visually, kind of is like a third check. Yeah, but
Thank you.
yeah, thank you so much. I see we have Nicholas. Hi,
Hi,
how are you?
thank you for the presentation. I'm so glad.
Oh,
Uh,
thank you.
my question kind of goes along with Francesca's. I generally don't have a problem with tension in my right hand,
Okay.
except when I'm playing a box suite. It's been consistent over the years,
Mm.
and things really lock up right in there, and it's usually very early on. And so
Okay.
I was wondering if there was anything else you could think of that might be influencing that.
Sure. That's very common, Nicholas. I mean, a lot of people launch into a Bach movement and, they start to look a little desperate couple lines in. I think that comes from trying to over control the sound when these choices haven't yet been made, the sound point choices. So I'm trying to think of a good example. Here, if I'm a little too close to the bridge, you can hear the slog I'm involved in right now. And as talented people who care about the sound, our first order of business is going to be to correct the sound, and we're going to clutch. So rather than do that, I would say just be a little smart about, like, even just a quarter of an inch adjustment or less might give you a bit more breathability so that you can get easier response from the string. Yeah, I have a feeling that's probably the culprit. A combination of overbowing in terms of speed for the sound point you're in, and then you catch
Okay.
yourself, and by then it's too late. Yeah. No, thank you for the
Yes.
question. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay, so we have Jason here.
Hi, Jason. Let's see.
Okay, let's see if he turns on his microphone and
See.
camera. And here we are.
Hello.
Hi, Jason. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you so much. This was amazing.
Oh, great. Thanks.
My question is, when all the things you're demonstrating, it seems like you have a really clear sound in your ear as to what you're going for,
Yes.
and that's guiding what you're doing with the bow.
Yes.
And my question was, when you have a brand new piece,
Mm-hmm.
do you have any way that you use to build that imagination, and that's what's driving you?
That's a fantastic question. Wow, thank you so much for that. Yes. So, I mean, it depends. If I'm playing something, let's say an unaccompanied piece for cello that I haven't played before. I'm not going to run and listen to other people first. I'm going to want to see what the terrain is and sort of understand the construction of the piece and and sort of have my own way of falling in love with it first and then exploring. I do a lot of singing. When I look at a piece, I hear it at the same time and then I sing it, and I might try things so that when I'm playing, I mean, you really put your finger on it. I'm playing a model that I've already got going in my head. Even if it's a model that's going to change. Maybe I'll decide, no, I don't like that. Okay, new time for a new model. But I'm not just playing. I'm trying to replicate something that I've conjured up. Or, you know, in the case of my friend Cecilia, if I've heard her do something amazing, I'll have that sound in my mind. I'm like, okay, how do I get close to that? If it's a piece of chamber music, you know, I'll be studying the score and trying to figure out all the different lines and imagining the different ways I can interact or provoke those lines. And that will influence what I come up with. So that's a sensational question, and I hope that, you know, I hope that I remember to do what we were just talking about, because I think it's really helpful.
Yeah, and I was just wondering if you on the opposite end, if you've been playing a piece for a long time, sometimes like myself, like I'll get stuck sort of doing the same things.
Yeah.
And you know, any advice on just how to expand our
Yeah, sure. Well, then that might be a time to start listening to some other people and say, okay, what other, I mean, that can be really fun actually, to take a movement of something and listen very specifically to maybe two or three other interpretations and really almost chart what people are doing. How are they handling the nuances that you've now worn deep tire treads into? You know, what are different approaches to cliches, things that have become cliche for you? And that can really be very refreshing.
Great.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great. I see Hannah.
Hi, Astrid.
Hi.
Thank you
Hi.
for such a fantastic evening.
Oh, thank you.
Wonderful demonstrations, fabulous ideas.
Thank you.
And I just had a question about up bow and down bow staccato, just whether you've got any sort of favorite exercises or kind of favorite approaches to those two strokes.
Yes, yes. Thanks for that, Hannah. I do. The You know, I was talking with Francesca a moment ago about using different combinations of fingers on the bow sometimes. So if I'm doing something Baroque, I might actually sort of use a little bit of the Frankenstein stroke here. And I'm balancing with 1 and 4. So there's just no way any collé is going to happen in there. For up bow staccato, I find that 1 and 3 work the best. And for a down bow, I do a little bit of a, I think, low on the horizon. So I kind of, instead of being on the A string level in this sort of way, I'll get as close to the D string as I can and sort of drag my weight. And then going back and forth from one to the other requires, for me at least, a little rebalancing. Right? So that I tend to be a little more pronated on the ups and a little more supinated on the downs for the staccato. But I would love to see what you do, because I'm not sure that I'm the world's authority on this, but that works for me and it feels relatively dependable.
No, thank you. I'm just really interested, you know, because everyone has little tips and things, and it's a stroke that often comes up where people, you know, aren't quite sure how to get it going. So that's great. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and just one last little thought about it. You can also, somebody showed me this. You can do, you probably know that one yourself, right? It can kind of help set up the friction and the feeling of the balance. So,
great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hannah. See you later. Hi, it looks like Lila.
Hi, Astrid. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I kind of have a follow-up question to what Jason was asking before, because for me, like, the easy part is like knowing what is hearing something in my mind and coming up with the interpretation. That's easy. But then translating it into like actually what I'm doing is the hard part. Like, so I was just wondering if you have like a way that you think about or go about like figuring out how you can best do justice to what you hear in your head and figuring out what you need to do with the bow.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Right? The trial and error. I think that's why those little techniques of like knowing how to get around, for example, or dividing the bow into songfulness so that you kind of make up for the weaker tip if you're doing something that's sustained, that can save a little time. I know that I can count on those things to promote a line, but honestly, I struggle. I have to go through things over and over, and I like my Franck, that getting enough juice right away and sweetness, and getting the hand to go from 1 to 4, and then there's like a certain way I want that to sound, and it's just every single time I have to like put on a helmet and sit and practice it until it starts to come out. But I think it's awesome that you have the ability to know what you want to sound like relatively quickly. And so don't give up on that. Keep sculpting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And record yourself. I mean, this is one really great thing about what we're all doing right now digitally. There's so much recording. We get to really hear ourselves a lot.
Right. Yeah, because I think sometimes it's easy to like have what you like to be hearing something in your head and not realize that that's not actually how it's sounding, because you're like thinking in your head and that's not what's happening.
Exactly. You can become so much of a doer that you're not actually responding in real time to what's happening and hearing it. Yeah. All these things take time, but it's the fact that you even asked the question means you're way ahead of where I was at your age. So that's fantastic.
Thanks so much, Astrid. This is really helpful.
Oh, good. Thank you for the question. Happy practicing.
Okay. Perfect. So I think we have the last question from an anonymous attendee.
Okay.
So would you have any suggestion or exercises on coordination between both hands? I once had a teacher had me thinking left hand fingerings on my right hand while playing. I thought that was interesting in some practice sessions.
That is interesting. So, oh wow, I haven't tried that yet. That's a great idea. I think for me, when I'm doing something that involves right hand rhythm, like separates like these, that kind of stuff, it's really important that I establish the bow's motion with the pulse and get that really solid. Like that's it. And then my left hand has to fit into that. That's already a coordinated set of activities, right? There's pulse and there's the bow in my right hand, and almost like a bus taking off, and the left hand has to time itself so that it fits into that context. I don't find that going back and forth is so helpful. But of course, if I'm playing something that's slurred, there the rhythm is mostly in the left hand because it's slurred. And with the exception of string crossings and bow changes, it's mostly in the left hand. So there things get a little tricky. Maybe it's just good to be aware and then to try things. Try leading with one hand or the other, but just turn up the volume on the pulse so that you feel rhythmically guided. That would be my advice. Yeah, thank you. Good question. Do we have... Hey, John.
Good to see you.
It's time.
Really special course. Thank you for doing this.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me to do it. It's you can see we can talk about the bow for a very long time, but yeah, this is great.
That's right, Ludo. I'm learning a lot of stuff about the cello this week. I mean, I'm a pianist, and so this is really special for me to sit here
Absolutely. Yeah,
complete absorption.
In the piano festival, we were kind of a little bit more prepared, but from technique point of view. But yeah, we loved every single time here for sure.
That's right. So thank you, and we'll see more of you. It's not over. We've got another day at Vivace, which we're really excited about. And tonight, actually, in a little over 30 minutes, Pulitzer Prize-winning composer Caroline Shaw joins us to talk about her extremely diverse career, from being a vocalist and a violinist and a composer and a producer, working with Kanye West and the New York Philharmonic, sometimes simultaneously, and how she kind of manages all of those things. And then finally, she's going to teach a master class on her piece in Manus Tuus, which is for solo cello, and singing, a little singing in there too. So
absolutely, yeah. And let's we we go on also introducing some of new music in our program, and we think that's very, very important, just to propose something that is also related to that, just to know and a wider repertoire and come closer to the new music as much as possible. And as usual, we're so lucky to have a world-class faculty here at Vivace. So thank you, Astrid, for being here the whole week and the whole program. That's something really special, and we really hope that we're creating a community also online. But I think we work, and our real mission is just to find a way to support these young talents that are here with us. So
That's right.
thank you, all the audience, for being here just to support us.
Yeah.
That's it. And we'll see you tomorrow, Astrid.
Sounds great, John. Thank you so much, Ludo, for all your help this evening.
You're welcome.
See you guys in shortly.
Perfect.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.